A History of Southern Missouri and Northern Arkansas by William Monks, published in 1907. Bravery of Captain Alsup, number 43. In the summer of 1863, the federal authorities established a military post at Clark's Mill in Douglas County, Missouri, on Bryant's Fork of White River, erected a post and stationed some Illinois troops under the command of a colonel with Captain Alsup's company, which was composed entirely of Douglas County citizens, in all about 250 or 300 men. General Joe Shelby, a Confederate, with about 500 troops, made a forced march from Arkansas, and during the nighttime surrounded the fort, and the next morning had his artillery in readiness to open fire. He ordered a complete surrender of the garrison. The captain of the fort asked for a few minutes to consider the matter. At the expiration of the time, the colonel in command agreed to surrender, stack up the guns and sidearms in the fort, march his men outside, and make an unconditional surrender. When the commander of the fort ordered his men and officers to stack their arms and march out, Captain Alsup and his company refused, and being cavalry, ordered his men to arm themselves and be ready to move whenever he ordered. While the commander of the fort was having the remainder of the garrison stack their arms, Captain Alsup and his company made a bold dash for liberty, came out of the fort shooting right and left, took the rebels by surprise, broke the rebel line, went through, being mounted on good horses, retreated up Bryant's Fork with the rebels in pursuit. While going through an old field that had grown up to burrs about as high as a man's head, Fritz Krause, father of the assistant postmaster at West Plains, was thrown from his horse, rolled under the burrs. The rebels passed by and never saw him. He laid in the burrs until dark, then made his escape and rejoined his company at Springfield. The rebels pursued them for about 2 miles, then returned to their command. General Shelby paroled the prisoners, and such things as he could not carry with him he destroyed, the fort being burned. He resumed his march in the direction of Springfield and was reinforced by about 500 troops. During this time, Captain Alsup and his men had reached Springfield and, strange to say, hadn't lost a man. Had a few slightly wounded. General Brown, who was in command of the post at Springfield, was said to be a brother-in-law of General Shelby, and on Shelby's arrival at Springfield, he demanded the surrender of the garrison. The Federal troops held a consultation and concluded the fight. After a brief engagement, General Shelby drew his troops off and moved north. There were several killed and wounded on both sides. General Brown's arm was broken by a piece from a shell. General Shelby continued his raid towards the Missouri River, had several small engagements, and then retreated from the state. Captain Alsup and his brave men should be held in memory by all comrades, especially by the loyal people of Douglas and Ozark counties, for their heroic action in charging through the rebel lines and making their escape after the post commander had attempted to deliver them into the hands of the rebels. The fort at Clark's Mill was never rebuilt. Captain Alsup and the loyal men of Douglas and Ozark counties and part of Wright County built a temporary fort near the center of Douglas County, and old and young organized themselves into companies and armed themselves. With the help of Captain Alsup's company, they appointed a few of their men as scouts, while the others worked in their fields. The scouts were out night and day along the state line, and if a rebel scout attempted to raid the counties, notice was given all along the line, and the men were all up in arms and ready to meet the raiders. It reminds one of reading the history of the early settlements along the Indian border. The settlers would build forts and put out sentinels. If the Indians were seen advancing, word was given, and the families would hurry to the fort, and the men armed themselves to drive the invaders back. So this organization, with some assistance from the post at Springfield, held Douglas and a part of Ozark and Wright counties during the remainder of the Civil War. And after the war was over, Douglas County gained the title of Old Loyal Douglas County. These old soldiers and comrades are fast falling, and very soon there will be none left to tell of the heroisms and sacrifices they made for the country they loved. Will these comrades and their sons and daughters be so ungrateful that they will let their heroism and sacrifices die with them and be forgotten, never to be written in history? The answer will be no, 1,000 times no. The history of their heroism and sacrifices shall be written and go down to their children and their children's children, and may Old Glory ever wave over the country that they love so well and for which they made so many sacrifices.